Welcome everybody. This class is on CyberTuner. It's called the Smarter iRCT. And you know what we're going to do, lots of times pianists don't know very much about what's inside the piano. It's a magic black box that does this. More and more schools are teaching piano students what goes on inside the piano. That's a good thing. All of you use CyberTuner. And for you, CyberTuner is this magical black box. It does these wonderful things. What we'd like to do in this class today is make some of it understandable. We'd like to give you a window into how it thinks, what it prioritizes, why it prioritizes it, things like that. So we're going to talk about the obvious smart features, which are smart pitch, smart partials, and smart tune. But we've just created 3 new smart features for this newest version, which came out last week. The last version is 7.5.1. And these features are, we've made OTS smarter. I just have a question. How many people in this room use OTSS? Okay. OTSS is developed for small pianos. It's a better way to transition across the break. But what I notice is many of our users, I haven't quite done a survey of you yet, but many of our users don't use OTSS. They don't know when to use it, when to do it. So we've just made CyberTuner smarter. OTSS is folded in, and CyberTuner looks at the piano and says, you should use OTSS, and it does it invisibly for you. Talk about that later.
Almost invisibly.
Yeah.
It tells you it did it.
We'll talk about it when we get to it. The same thing, OTS. How many people have ever tuned a Borsendorfer with the extra notes, the 9 extra notes or the 2 extra notes?
5.
Okay.
5
and tuning those notes, who knows how to tune those notes? We always had a procedure of how to do it. It was incredibly complex. I think probably Kent and Dean and 5 other people knew how to do it, you know. And now it's completely automated. CyberTuner will calculate a complete tuning for the big Borsendorfers. And the third thing that CyberTuner got smarter, we'll talk about these in great depth, but CyberTuner will now create a tuning based on pure 12ths, and it will do it across the entire keyboard, and it's an amazing sounding tuning. And so it's gotten smarter in all these ways. So this is the CyberTuner class. It's being taught by myself and Dean Rayburn. For those of you who don't know, Dean Rayburn is an RPT and a software engineer. He's the inventor of CyberTuner. He does all of the programming on CyberTuner. And nobody knows more about CyberTuner. We're very lucky to have him here with us.
So, and this is Carl Lieberman. Carl's also a RPT. He's what we've just promoted him to Imagineer, because the three new features were really kernels. The kernel's ideas were his, and so I just implemented. I just did the grunt work. So I took him a little farther than he expected. I missed this. We're going to do a little bit of a survey. How many folks are iRCT users on iOS right now? So almost most people. How many folks have older RCT versions? We got a couple. 3. How many folks use other ETDs? Is there any other ETDs? Oh, I guess there are. Yeah. Okay. And how many folks are oral tuners only? You have anybody? No oral tuner. How many of us are oral tuners? Okay, everybody raise your hand, because you got to be able to tell how that tuning device did somehow. Okay, so how many of you folks who use CyberTuner, or at least use an iPhone, are really comfortable with managing your iPhone and managing all the apps that go on and the downloads and all? How many are really comfortable with that? Good. There's a lot of folks that aren't, and when we're going to teach you real quickly a couple of things that will make your ability to use CyberTuner much better. One of the most frequently asked questions, the calls we get on our support line, we're happy to help, but we want to give you a couple tools here to do it yourself. Occasionally you'll see CyberTuners comes up and the spinner's a little slow, or Chameleon just goes and people call us, your software is not working right. Well, CyberTuner is just showing the symptom. 99.99% of the time when you see that kind of thing, things are slow. What's happening is you either have too many apps open. Maybe you might have 20 or 100 apps open in the background. You might have one app open that's just an absolute pig, that's using all the resources. Or you might have an app open in the background. Got a call last week from somebody who was downloading podcasts in the background while they tuning, and then they call us, and CyberTuner wasn't really working very well. Okay, so that's not surprising to me. It shouldn't be surprising to anybody. That you're running on a machine that has limited resources. It's finite resources, and CyberTuner needs a lot. It doesn't need all the resources, but when it's running, when it's tuning pianos, when you're tuning pianos, it needs most of the resources, more than 50%. So, very quickly, first thing you want to do, if you have any slowness, any issues at all, is hit your home button, and then double tap your home button. And yep, I'm going to mess you up, and I'm going to quit. Simply swipe up, and you see that Adobe just quit. So if you might have 100 other apps. You just need to keep swiping up, quitting, including CyberTuner normally. And then once you've done that, usually CyberTuner will be fine. Occasionally you may have. You may still have a problem. If you do, then you probably have something. For instance, the apps. Let's say you have automatic updates on set. And right now you have a fast connection that's downloading 500 updates while you're trying to tune or podcast or whatever. So you might want to, at that point, if you have a problem, go in and put it on airplane mode. Very, very simple. If you quit all apps and you're in airplane mode, you are not going to have any issues at all. You've gotten rid of all the resource use other than CyberTuner.
One other issue. So normally when you leave an app, it's like putting it to sleep. If you want to quit the app, you have to do what Dean just showed you. He just double-clicked the home button. All the apps were there, the apps that are running, you see a picture of, and he swiped up with his finger, and that's how he quit the app.
So watch, I'll do it again. So double tap the home button, and you're going to see a window for every app that's open. I simply swipe up, and that app exits. That does a hard exit on the app. Okay, the app is no longer running. It's still on your device. You haven't deleted it, but the app is no longer running in the background.
Now, the other thing, sometimes when you're having a problem, you think, I'm going to reboot the machine. I'm just going to restart the machine. I'm going to power off. I'm going to hold the button. I'm going to power off. And you know what? When it restarts, all the apps that were running when you powered it off are going to come back on again. You haven't really quit the apps, and whatever problem you were having, it's going to be with you. So if you're going to do a hard restart and just kind of make sure you're starting from zero, first go in and quit all the apps, then do a reboot. Everything will reset. All your problems will disappear. It's the easiest way to do it.
You know, kid problems, marriage problems. They all disappear.
Oh, what a bargain.
Just quickly, does everybody know how to restart? It's rare that you have to restart for any reason, but hold down your power button. If you hold down the power button for just a few seconds, it's going to ask me if I want to power off. This is the literal power off. When you normally power off we call it power off with your power button, it doesn't power it off, it just puts it to sleep. This is the real power off. So if you have some issue, usually CyberTuner hardly ever would ever need this, but if you just have some network issue, some other crazy issue, you may want that.
If you use an iPhone and sometimes you get no service, and you should be getting 4 bars here, you should be getting good phone service. Whatever the issue is, it's confused. If you'll quit everything and power off, everything will come back on. How many people have updates set for automatic? And how many people do it manually? Okay, that's me. What I would ask is that you, whenever, normally you want to have a waiting time, you want to make sure there aren't any problems. If you want to wait a day before you update CyberTuner or 2 days, that's fine. But when we release a version, we've beta tested it for a long time. A lot of people, it's very stable. It's almost never going to happen that you're going to have a problem. So in general, when we release an update, we would like you to update. It's free, it's included. Whatever problems there are have been solved. Lots of times there was some small issue, it's been solved in the new update. So always update.
The only other thing I'd add to that, if you want to be a belt and suspenders kind of guy and you want to be super safe, wait till CyberTuner itself tells you to update. Because that means we've beta tested it a zillion times, we released it to the App Store, and we downloaded it ourselves internally, and the beta team tested the final release version, which can have some minor differences. And then we've decided to stick it, to put the flag on the CyberCloud to tell everybody to update. When you see CyberTuner itself telling you it's time to update, you can trust it.
One other thing, just something you might imagine. You're in the field, for whatever reason, you've got to download a new copy, you've got to log in, you're logged out, there's an issue. Of course, in order to do that, CyberTuner has to call home, it has to check the CyberCloud, okay? We have 2 CyberClouds in different states running independently. If for some reason the CyberCloud were to crash, for whatever reason, there's 2 CyberClouds. It will never happen that you will be locked out because our end of the system is down.
They're both up 99.99% of the time. So
yeah,
we calculate that was 1 in 10 million. That any 1 second would be without a cloud.
So my question: how many people in the room, again, just remind me, have not used CyberTuner? Okay, so we're gonna. I want to do this. This is the headline, and the headline about CyberTuner and why aside from all of the wonderful things it does, this is why I believe it's really a quantum advance in tuning. All devices, whether you tune orally, whether you use any of the other electronic tuning devices, all of the devices create a tuning and they put the tuning on the piano. Okay? And let's assume every method you use is a wonderful method to tune. Of course, unless it is absolutely at pitch and in tune, every time you tune a note, you affect the other notes and it knocks notes out of tune. CyberTuner, the headline is, we don't tune to where we want the piano to be. We tune to some imaginary place, and after we tune all of the notes, they settle to exactly where we want them to be. That's what's really unique about CyberTuner. Every tuning is a pitch raise. Alan?
So even in fine-tune mode, that's going on, not just in smart tune?
No, it is only going on if you tune in smart tune mode. Okay?
Pitch raise.
Right. In fine-tune mode, it just tunes it to whatever it is. But what I would suggest to you, your default tuning mode should be concert smart tune. Okay? If something is 3 cents off, it's 4 cents off. As you move each note, it affects. What happens is there's extra, when you pull a string tighter, there's a downward force vector. It pushes down on the bridge, and it radiates out and affects its neighbor. It's a 1/x² curve. And so the farther away you get from the note, the less it's affected. But every string, if you affect it, affects its neighbors. Let's take that into account. This is what's so amazing about this device. You can do 1-pass pitch raises. So when a piano up to 8 cents off, I work in a performing arts venue. The piano lives at A440. We have some artists, violinists, who want the piano at A442. That means I have to come in before the rehearsal, move the piano from 440 to 442. The artist rehearses. I do a touch-up tuning before the performance. These are really world-class players who are playing. These things may be recorded. I really want the piano to be stable. I don't have any problem doing a 1-pass, 8-cent pitch raise and having it be really, really in tune. I may fuss and do a little cleaning up on the second tuning. So the rule is you can do an 8-cent concert smart tune pitch raise, and it's going to be really as good as it's going to be. And when you're in someone's home, the holy grail of piano tuning, what we all wanted was you walk into someone's house, you tune the piano, and it's tuned. You don't have to do 2 tunings. Of course, it's always better to do. If you have the time and you want to fuss and then you want to do a second tuning, you can always improve every tuning. But this is a business. We're trying to make money. In most situations, you want to go into someone's house, you want to tune the piano as well as possible. If the piano was 20 cents off, when you do a 20-cent smart tune, it's going to be really, really close. You can walk away from it. You want to fuss and you want to make it better, spend time. I usually in those situations do a second pass. It's an oral pass, okay? And I just kind of clean a little bit up, 5 minutes of oral cleanup. So this is the headline. This is the real killer app.
So Carl lives in piano tuning nirvana. He lives in L.A. where the humidity changes like 1%, except I live in Michigan. And so the pianos I tuned, last Wednesday I tuned one, Nate had tuned it 3 months earlier, and it went 28 cents sharp from 3 months earlier. It's a church piano, it's crazy. So my default tuning mode is smart tune mode, but not concert mode, because I'm tuning these pianos that are this sharp, this far off. It's just not gonna. It's not. I don't get enough benefit from concert smart tune mode. Usually, I'm not going to have time to do that second pass. 28 cents, I'm probably going to have to do a second pass, but I'm probably going to put it in fine tune mode. I also don't like the spinner set as fast as Carl does. In concert mode, you may love that spinner set that fast. It's set right to the edge. You may actually, for me, I would have to get 3 espressos, a triple espresso to tune with it set that fast. I just my eyes can't work that fast. So I'll use the standard smart tune mode with the standard amount of spinner speed. So concert mode is, if you go to CyberTuner concert mode, you can get right to the tuning mode by tapping the tuning mode button. Concert mode is a switch. You can turn it on or off. It applies to both fine tune and smart tune. And you can see it sets the, Carl's got these customized. Okay, so normally smart tune mode is going to be 1.7 cents per revolution second. When we turn concert mode on, Carl's got it set down, I think default is 1.0, but you have it set down to 0.8, the fastest it can possibly, it's right on the bleeding edge. So it depends on your level of ability and your level of how fast you can tune, how close you has to be, your desire to, zero right in. I prefer to tune with right about at 1.7. So
God almighty, Dean.
I don't want it quite that fast. Yeah.
So concert mode isn't just a modifier of fine tune, but also of smart tune?
That's
Both
right.
of them.
That's why it's all together there, and that's why
And by the way,
concert mode
just show them the oval. Go put it in regular tune.
Okay, we're in fine tune right now. We're gonna go back, and we can see what the range is going to be right there, 25 cents plus or minus. And then we go back to CyberTuner, it's 25
And look
cents.
at the circle, the oval is
25.
25 and the dark gray circle is 10. Now put it in concert mode.
Concert tune. So the piano better be within 10 cents, and really all the notes really should be within 5 or 8 cents.
Right, and that's what you're doing. This is concert mode was, when we first conceived of it, was for a concert situation when you're making very small adjustments. And Dean has it said, when you're making very small adjustments, when you're only 1 or 2 cents away, you really want to be accurate. Am I going to overshoot by 12 hundredths or am I going to overshoot by 14 hundredths? Okay, I mean, it's kind of crazy, but you really want to be accurate. So it slows down as it gets really close because it makes really accurate measurements so that you can exactly overshoot. Now, we all know 2 hundredths of a cent. Who has hammer control to do 2 hundredths of a cent? But at least the machine is starting you with the most accurate possible setting.
Right, and I don't do concert tuning anymore. I did for years and years. So if I was doing concert tuning, I would be using concert tune mode because I'd be tuning. Those pianos were really, really stable. I'm tuning them Thursday for the rehearsal and Friday for the concert and Saturday for the second concert. So by Saturday they're going to be really stable, and I'm probably going to only be changing a few notes. So yeah, concert tune mode's going to do really well for me. But for the pianos I tune now for churches that are go 28 cents sharp in 3 months, and home pianos,
I don't have to do that.
it's not beneficial. Just the regular tune mode is perfect for me, and I don't want to work quite that hard either on those pianos.
So what we'd like to do, we'll get back to Smart Tune. Most of you already know about it. Do you want to say one more thing?
Yeah, let's finish up. If you do want to set a different tuning mode for your default, or if you want to set concert mode as your default, go to the tuning mode window and hit the little. There's a whole bunch of neat stuff right behind this little spinner gear. These are the spinner puffs. Hit that little spinner gear, and you'll see all kinds of neat stuff. And almost all these things apply to the particular tuning mode that you're in right now. Okay, most of them are specific to that mode. So you can see it says fine-tune concert spinner, and so right now we would only be adjusting the spinner speed for the fine-tune concert mode. But down here, start CyberTuner defaults lets you start tuning. You got start tuning mode in fine-tune mode.
That's correct.
Okay.
I look at it.
So CyberTuner normally starts out with Smart Tune mode as your default tuning mode. When you start a new tuning, this mode right here should be the tuning mode you prefer for most of the pianos you do. So you don't have to switch tuning modes is the least. You want to switch tuning modes the least amount. But you can also set concert mode. See, so what this is saying is Carl starts most of his tunings in fine-tune mode with concert tuning mode set on.
Because I'm doing the same pianos over and over a lot of time.
Right. So he's tuning, and I would say if you're doing a smart tune mode, concert smart tune mode, where you're doing these little tiny pitch raises, once you get to a certain point where you're doing half cent, 1 cent, half cent, or less, you probably want to switch to. What you're gonna notice is that the spinner recording slows down because it gets more and more particular. Because when you're within a half cent, it can't be approximate. If you're pitch raising the piano 10, 15, 20 cents, it doesn't have to be as accurate. Don't tell anybody. It doesn't have to be as accurate as it does when you're pitch raising the piano half a cent. Okay? So, and it isn't, because it takes more time to be more accurate. So once the piano is, let's say, with less than a cent, maybe less than a half a cent, switch over to fine-tune mode, and it's going to speed you up a little bit. Because there's no real good reason to be
and if I can just say
1/10 of a cent overpulse.
In the real world, the fact, in a way, computers fuel you because you get this information and it's telling you about tenths of a cent and half. In the real world, if I'm working on a performance piano, if the note is off by a half a cent, but the unison is absolutely stable, I don't change the note. It's close enough. No one can hear the difference. If you've got really stable notes, declare victory. You don't have to put the perfect tuning. I mean, if a note is really off, of course, correct it. But if a note is, if the screen is telling you it's not perfect, you don't have to make it perfect. Okay, that's just my opinion. Okay, so I'd like to talk a little bit about, let's peel back the black box and let's do the first thing that all of you do when you're making a tuning. We sample a note 3 times. We play a note 3 times. And remember, we're building our whole tuning on these samples. We really want these samples to be good. We want to believe in them. And when you sample the note 3 times and you get consistent samples, almost by definition, you've got a good sample. So when you sample a note 3 times, you notice that you get these green or yellow circles. They've got a number in it. What we're going to do is we're going to make the number meaningful to you today. We're going to tell you exactly what that is. But first thing I'd like to do, Dean added a new feature just for this version. On the yellow note, why don't you resample that? Whenever I want all my samples to be green for me to go on. Now with a yellow sample of 0.20, who cares? But if it's red, you have to resample.
Yeah, I get a higher variance because it's actually an open string that you can hear the unisons a little off. So I left it because I actually wanted a higher variance. But the latest version gives you more information. It tells you, oh, it's that number, and this is what it used to be. So it's just giving you a little more information to make a better decision. I'm going to revert, and I'm going to try it again, muted.
You're just hitting resample.
I'm going to hit revert. I'm going to hit resample. Yep. There, and we're really happy.
Okay, and you want green samples before you go on. Yes.
He struck that with a pretty soft beat. When somebody's playing, they're going to be playing probably a little louder than that.
Right.
Most of the time, is that going to make any difference?
The little hand will say mezzo forte there, and that's what we mean. Mezzo forte is about, right? It's not critical. You just don't want to be playing fortissimo or pianissimo, really. Anything louder than pianissimo, but yeah, people are going to be playing music pianissimo and fortissimo and everything along the whole spectrum. We just want something that's in the middle of that. We don't want it really, really soft. We don't want to really record really, really soft because there's actually a little bit of it falls below the threshold. It's hard to get a better sample. We don't want fortissimo either because it actually distorts the sound. We get the best recording with a medium blow.
So Dean, would you go ahead?
Would you advocate just holding it down one long note or playing it several times? Or
The question, should we hold it down one note or play several times? Most pianos, I just hold it down once per sample, three times per A4, 3 times per A3, and so on, except for A5. A5, I'll generally play it twice because especially if A5 dies a little bit quicker than the other notes. And so I generally get better, lower variances and better samples just by playing A5 twice.
So for A5, I normally do this. Everything else we do just as one play. Will?
Sometimes I have a tendency, especially on A3 or A2, it's in green, but I want to get in single digit versus...
So let me disabuse you of that, okay? Okay, let's go to it. It'll
So
be part
the
of the answer to this question.
The question is, should we do...
How low should the samples be?
How low should the samples be? Do you really need to have it below 0.10?
So would you hit Adobe Reader and then go to iRCT variants? So what I'm going to tell you here is this is what is going on behind the scenes. When you sample 3 times, we're going to get to what partials. But for instance, for this sample, for this slide that's coming up, this was A2 that was sampled, and CyberTuner is listening to the 2nd, 4th, 5th, and 6th partials. So when you're in Chameleon and you play A2, it's listening to the 2nd, 4th, 5th, and 6th partials. And I played it 3 times, and these are the recorded values. And the question is, what is the variance? So if you look at the 3 second partial samples, 5.62, 5.75, 5.79, the greatest difference between any 2 samples is between 5.62 and 5.79. It's about 0.17. Go over to the 6th.
The greatest difference is right here.
The greatest difference there, 0.72 at the 6th partial, 0.94. The greatest difference between any of the 3 samples on any of the 4 partials, that's what the variance number is. It's the worst discrepancy in your 3 times, okay? And in this case, the worst discrepancy would have come up as 0.22. So when you get green numbers, it's all 0.19 or below, okay? The sample differed by 0.19. Well, the sample is really kind of in the midpoint of that because it could be plus or minus 1/10 of a cent. Okay? So you're within 1/10 of a cent of being perfect when you have 0.19. You don't have to get any closer than that. If you get 0.1 and you're within 0.05 of a cent, it doesn't matter. There's no more accuracy. It's beyond, it's like not a significant figure. So as long as your samples are green, accept them. That's good enough.
To put it in perspective, the limit of human hearing is somewhere below 0.20 and above 0.10. So a really good oral tuner with an extra cup of coffee on a good day in the morning, if they're a morning person, can hear 0.20, but they probably can't hear 0.10. So it varies from tuner to tuner, but I've tested a number of tuners. That's the area. So anything below 0.20 is,
David?
Really new pianos, but especially really old pianos, sometimes I can't get to the green.
Of course.
Sometimes the yellow is the dream.
If that's all you can get, then that's what you use.
Are there techniques for getting better?
Well, I think that the number one way to get a well-prepped piano where the strings are, where the termination points are really good. You've leveled the strings, you've pulled up at the capo bar, the strings are solid, there's no wiggle of the bridge pins on the other side. You're going to get super low numbers. Old pianos that haven't been prepped give you higher numbers because the boundary conditions aren't as good and the wave just isn't as stable. And you can sort of hear it. When you come up to a Shigeru and you make a sample and it's like, when you come up to a crummy piano and you sample it, it kind of sounds a little kind of wavy to your ear, and you're not going to get great numbers. So you have to do, if you're working on a piano where the best numbers you can get are 0.30 and it's yellow, those are the best samples you can get.
And that's
not bad.
0.30 is still plus or minus 0.15. It's still right at the limit of human hearing, and it's still not bad.
Right. It's not a thing to obsess about.
The tuning's going to be great, and you got to remember that you're normally talking about a poor quality piano. The tuning's going to be fine for that piano. So.
Question.
Pulling the note up won't improve the test note at all.
Pulling it up, you don't want to destabilize the tuning before you tune the piano. There's no reason to pull it pull it up to A forfeit. Now you can have a weird situation where the note is 50 cents flat and it won't read. Okay, for whatever reason. Okay, and in that case, yes, you could pull it up to get the samples. If it was 70 cents flat, I would just sample the B flat. sample the B flats. But here's the thing. If you're tuning a piano that's 70 cents flat, and you're going to do a major pitch raise, you don't care about the samples on that piano. Go to your library and go to the closest piano you have. If you have that same model piano from an earlier thing, if you have the library, if you have a similar model piano by the same brand, if it's a crazy upright, you have an upright that you think is someone like that upright. Use that as your thing for your first tuning. Now that you've got the first tuning on the piano, now you can sample the piano. Now the second tuning, you're trying to do a really good job.
So the point is the piano needs to be within, say, somewhere around 10 cents of pitch to sample it for a final tuning. Otherwise, the inharmonicity, the change in inharmonicity, let's say for 20 cents or 30 cents or more, is going to be so great, it's going to change how that piano actually tunes for the final tuning when you pull it up. 20 cents is a little bit of change. 30 cents, 40 cents, then it starts to be really significant. I really like the piano to be sampled within 10 cents, if at all possible.
Michael.
Real quick, let's say you do have a smaller size piano and you need a 50-cent pitch raise, and then you do your rough pitch raise first pass. I mean, aren't we kind of going to expect it to not be stable, even when we go and do our fine pass? I mean,
no, that Michael has asked if you, when you go into the second tuning, is it not going to be stable? The world has changed. When I learned to tune, the concept was do a rough pitch raise, do it fast, then do a fine tune. Okay, that worked because no one really knew how to do a pitch raise. That's the only reason that people followed that. It's bad advice. The way to change the pitch on a piano is to get as close as possible on the first pass and to get as close as possible on the second pass. And we now have technology that no matter how out of tune the piano is, it'll allow you to get really, really close on the first pass, okay? So take the time. Don't do a 12-minute pitch raise. When we used to teach this class, Dean and I, one person used to sit at the piano and would be doing a pitch raise, and the other person would talk, and we always did the first pitch raise in less than 12 minutes. We can tune really fast, okay? Never in my life am I going to do that again. If the first pass takes 45 minutes, the first pass takes 45 minutes. Get as close as you can on the first pass, then you'll get as close as you can on the second pass. You're not coming back in a week. You're not coming back in a month. It's really stable. Okay?
So the only exception might be if you're an enormous pitch raise, you're probably going to 150 cents.
And if you want to say to that person, but this piano is 150 cents flat, they haven't tuned the piano in 30 years. What are you going to say to them? I'm charging you a lot for the pitch correction today, and by the way, I got to come back next month. No, it'll be good enough. It was 150 cents flat before you tuned it. It's going to be good enough. You don't have to obsess about
your
this.
Your second pass will be perfectly enough.
Perfectly
enough for them.
good. Question?
I have to back you up, but just to make sure I understand, maybe my practice is if it's way out, I'll tune the sample notes, the A's, bring them up to pitch and then sample, and you have just said not to bother with that, right?
I wouldn't do that. I think it's a waste of time, because if you're having to bring them up, if they're so flat, repeat the question. Should you bring sample notes up before you tune them in Chameleon 2? Chameleon? No, because if it's that flat, you're better off to pick a
Target tuning.
A target tuning that's close enough, and it's going to actually be closer than the tuning you'd create with that method. Probably closer.
That's what your iRCT library is for.
Yeah. Either your own library or iRCT library, or if the piano's 100 cents flat, you'd be way better off just to use a demo piano, one of the 5 demo pianos built into Chameleon as a target. Use whatever, or any tuning practically. If it's 100 cents flat, then bringing it up, it's not worth the time.
So the next thing I want to talk about, again, behind the box, we talked about the variants. So now you're sampling a piano, you're sampling the 5 A's. What exactly are you doing? So CyberTuner's listening to something, the spinner's going around. What is it doing when it's going around? So Dean is going to bring up a slide of the sample. CyberTuner listens to a certain set of partials every time it's listening to a note. It's called CH2 samples, iRCT CH2 samples. You see it? Yeah, there you go. So when you play A4, CyberTuner is listening to 1, 2, 3, and 4, A3, 1, 2, 3, and 4, A2, 2, 4, 5, and 6, A1, 4, 6, 7, and 10. And these are all loud partials on these notes. A5, 1, 2, and 3. 3 isn't very loud on A5, but it's trying to listen to those. Now, you'll notice that there are a pair, the 4-1 red, the 4-2 green, the 6-3. This is in the past. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but when we, CyberTuner is creating tunings based on oral principles. So it was kind of creating a 4-2 treble octave, a 6-3 bass octave, fitting it within a 4-1 double octave, and it wasn't guessing. In other words, that's why we sample the partials we sample. We sample the partials we sample so CyberTuner can create a tuning like an exact oral tuning if you were listening to these intervals. Okay? We're now going to spend our time talking about this new tuning style, and so it's not so significant. But if you use any of the numbered tuning styles, this is how it's creating the tunings, using that 4-2, that 4-1, that 6-3. Alan.
So we're talking one of the things about when you resample. If you're tuning the same piano you tuned before, you got the tuning in the library, do you resample it each time?
Great question. Alan asks if you resample every time you tune a piano. Because you, like me, live in a fairly benign place, pianos don't go all over the lot, except for during the Santa Anas. We do have extreme weather that hits us. I think everything about tuning, the three most important things in tuning are stability, stability, and stability. And part of stability is doing the exact same tuning to the piano every time. I don't want, now if you sample it now and you sample it 6 months from now, it's only going to be slightly different. But you've introduced another layer of error into the situation. I do the same tuning. Once I have a tuning that I like for a piano, I use the same tuning over and over again. It saves me the 2 minutes of sample time, but I also think it increases stability.
And that works great in piano nirvana. But in Michigan, where we live in the other end of the spectrum, one of the problems that we see is that we have great extremes, from extreme dryness in January to the middle of summer or spring, summer, fall. We might have 117% humidity just dripping. Customers that live right on the lake.
Water beating off the side of the piano.
So in that extreme, what I've seen and measured is pianos. The inharmonicity in pianos actually changes with the humidity. So what happens is if you measure a tuning with Chameleon in January when it's 4% humidity in this home where they have no humidification, the piano's way flat, you measure it. If you come back in August when it's 117% along the lake, like they live on Lake Michigan, literally, the tuning is not going to be optimal. Sometimes it's going to be just a little off. Sometimes it's going to be noticeably off. So if I'm going to be tuning opposite seasons, I resample. I take the 2 minutes, I resample. But I still find that if I tune I tune at the opposite season, for me, I still save the tuning 6 months ago from January. I'm tuning it in July. That tuning I did in January is saved, and it's a great pitch raise because my piano just moved 42% from A438 to A446. So I still have a nice pitch raise target because I don't want to float the pitch quite that much. So I'm going to compress that. Generally, I float the pitch from 439 to 442. The pianos move a lot more than that in Michigan, but I'll let them.
It's interesting. Like we float in California, we float from -1 cent to +4 cents.
See,
that's the window that we tune within.
So the answer to that question really varies on where you tune pianos. If it's Michigan, Minnesota, or if you're in California.
And if you're in
Also, save that tuning from January when it's 4% relative humidity and use it next January or when it's 4% again.
That'll probably work.
Same thing with the July.
Exactly. That'll probably work. We have some users who save their tunings in a really wet environment, and they actually put the humidity in the header, what it was, and you can measure it with your little digital damp chaser hygrometer, and then you can put it in the header when you do it in the wintertime.
And by the way, there's a new feature in the new version. In landscape mode, we now record the date that you created the tuning. So in fact, if you create a tuning in January 23rd, you don't have to put the humidity. If you want to know that it's the winter tuning, the date is saved. Automatically. This is a new feature. I didn't even mention it. We have so many Cool new features.
It's only enough space to show it in landscape mode, but there it is. It's the date that you calculated that tuning. So it's a handy little piece of information. So
Yes.
Would you just demonstrate how to save the file?
Absolutely. So let me start. Dean will run the machine. Here's the most important thing. You have a bunch of files, tuning files. You have your library files. Everybody has iRCT library. I personally create a number of files. I have my stage pianos, I have my Steinway pianos in a file, I have my Yamaha pianos, and we'll show you how to create a file. But the last file that you open, whatever was the last file that you opened, when you save a tuning, that's where the tuning is going to be saved. So for most of you, it's going to be iRCT library.
So let's go and calculate is that the file that's open? Okay, if you're...
No, don't use that one because we're going to use this later
if you're
in the class.
question what file you have open, hit the tunings icon at the bottom, right down here. And then you're going to see the name of the file at the top, in this case, 2016 class. And then it tells you how many tuning records are in it. If you hit the files button right at the top, we can open a different file. I'm just going to open iRCT library. That's the default file. Now I'm going to go back to Chameleon, bottom left. If you want to name and save tunings, you're going to need to tap advanced at least once and choose name and save. It won't by default, but we want that name and save to be
If you
on.
don't tune that, if you don't activate name and save, you can't save a tuning.
It'll just save it
It's the first thing you have to do.
Save it in a scratch tuning that'll get overwritten next time. And you may want to do that for a lot of your tunings. It's up to you. You can do that on the fly. To actually save and then calculate a tuning, you hit the calculate button. And I have it set to show me the graph. I want to see the graph. I want to see what it's going to look like. The next thing, because I have name and save set, I hit tune. Here's where we're going to actually name and save. Here's the key thing. There's a save button right here. I need to hit save. And there's the file I'm going to be saving it into. There's the name of the file right there, iRCT library. Okay? And I can put the piano make in there, whatever information I want. Hit tune. And that's now saved in my, I've saved that Y piano into my tuning library, into iRCT library. And then if I want to go look at it.
Search for Y.
I could search for Y. And there we go. Oh, pops right up at the top. You can search piano, info, serial, or all. So there's the piano right there. We can see it's saved in our library. If anybody's read our new manual, we have a new paragraph in there that helps you with the concept of how to save tunings in files. Okay, what you want to be able to do is you want to be able to search these using our search function. The search function is awesome. You can search for any tuning in the file, but we don't have a search for searching lots of multiple files. If we did, it would take forever to work. So so what you want to do is organize your files so that you know what tunings are in there. For instance, if you tune for a college, you can put all the tunings for that college in a file. If you've saved zillions of them, you can either save them by A through Z, all the Smiths in the S file and all the Jones in the J file, or you could do all the Steinways in an S file search. You want to have your tunings records saved into as few files as you can, and you want those files. You want to be able to tell, for instance, Carl's got all his Baldwins saved in a Baldwin file. That's good because he comes to a Baldwin, he knows where to go for this Baldwin. If this is a Baldwin, he knows where to go. If it's for XYZ College and they're all saved in one file, that's awesome. So, does that make sense for everybody? As few files as possible and identifiable easily is the key.
Okay, so here's the thing. I'd like to say one of the things at CyberTuner is we feel that we have two missions. We have to serve two distinct populations. Sometimes they overlap, but we feel we have to serve the everyday tuner, the person who's making a living. They're going out, they're tuning pianos. They may be great or whatever, but the job is to get the job done, collect the check, and move on to the next piano. And for people like that, which is it's certainly me, what we've done is we used to have this thing called OTSP. I've talked about it, and it's for small pianos. And we used to have, as I said, people choose it, and no one knew when to choose it. So we now CyberTuner's smart. CyberTuner knows how to choose it. We've told it when to choose it. So it's like having Dean looking over your shoulder saying, choose OTSS. And if you choose OTS4 or OTS5 and CyberTuner needs to do it, it will now in the header say OTS4S or OTS5S. It'll tell you that it used it, okay? But you don't have to do anything about it. You don't have to do anything about it. It'll do it all by yourself. So this is a feature that, yeah.
This is a Kimball Spin It, and I set it to OTS4, but it added the S on the end of 4 because it modified the tuning specifications so that it optimizes this piano, especially in the bass. So it's going to automatically do this for you. You don't have to worry about it. We had a couple calls. You took OTSS away from us. Where did it go? We didn't. It's always a good idea when you download a new version. We put it in things like this in the release notes.
So one of the things we're always trying to do is we're trying to make the program smarter. We're giving it artificial intelligence. It thinks better. It does things all by itself. We have a second market that we think. We like to think that this device is a device that is used by the absolute best technicians in the world. The best technicians are also choosing CyberTuner. And if you're one of the best technicians in the world, you will work on really good Borsendorfers. You will work on Imperials or 275s or 225s. You will work on pianos that have more than 88 notes. And as I said, it's a very difficult thing. These strings are very high, very close to the breaking point. It's very easy to break these strings, okay? It's really good to have a tuning program that tells you where to tune these strings. You don't want to break these strings. They're expensive strings, and they're loud when they break. Ask me how I know.
Most of us don't tune Bosendorfers with the extra notes very often, but if you do come to one, CyberTuner is almost certainly going to say, oh, this is a really low inharmonicity piano. It's probably big. How big is it? So you're going to see.
You've all seen this screen, right? Sometimes the screen pops up after you sample a piano. If the inharmonicity of A1 and A2 are low, CyberTuner has a couple of other conditions. It looks at it and it says, wow, this is a really well-scaled piano. But it doesn't know how big it is, whether it's a 6-foot, 7-foot, 9-foot Bosendorfer. This is where you tell it.
So you choose, does it have 4 extra notes or 9 extra notes? And then back. So right now I chose 97 notes. This is a 97 note. Kimball Spin It. Wow. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, boy.
We're going to go back and choose Steinway D, and then we're going to go back and choose 97 notes again. Okay? Yeah. There we go. So, and we have a, obviously Steinway doesn't make a 9'6", but it's the closest thing we have as far as size. And we're going to hit calculate and tune, and it inserts the fact that it's Bosendorfer 97 note grand in there for you, and you can edit what model if you like. It doesn't know what model.
You could put Borsendorfer Imperial. There's only one 97.
There's only one 97. I don't remember the model number, but you could put that in there too.
290.
Okay. Well, in the future, they might release a different model.
They might.
This is generic. In any case, you don't have to worry about how to figure out how do you get that O with those 2 dots on it. CyberTuner.
I don't know how to do that.
Yeah, CyberTuner puts it in there.
I love it.
Yeah. So
the umlaut.
Yeah, the umlaut. So it's correct. You got so I'm going to hit tune, and we're going to save it in our little library. You're going to have to delete this later.
I know.
Okay. And there we go. So now in.
And look at the bottom. Look at the color of the notes, guys.
We
Look
actually
at
have
that.
9 extra notes at the bottom. It looks just like the piano, so it's real simple.
Go down to, Paulello adds another.
They add more than that?
Yes.
How many pianos like that are in the world?
1.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'm not going to worry about that. There's quite a few. There's actually quite a few of these Bosendorfers. How many have ever tuned a Bosendorfer with extra notes? So yeah. Okay. So I. They're really hard to hear, and we worked extra hard on not only the interface, but also the core engine was modified so that it actually can hear those notes better. And we benefited because the low notes and all the way the lowest octave or 2 on a regular 88 note piano benefits because the spinner is cleaner and and easier to read, and it's also, the note switching is better down there. Because I had to get the note switching, was really hard to get to work on those low notes, especially because I didn't have one, and I had to rely on my beta tester. So I made this change, guys. I had 3 beta testers tuning those pianos, and I made this change. How does that work? So it was a hard one to do.
So when CyberTuner asks us, is it 6 foot, 7 foot, 9 foot, and we tell it, what does it do with that?
Okay, basically the code is this. If you tell it it's a 9-foot piano, it sets the lowest bass octave to the 12th partial, and it goes from A1 to A0 ending at a pure 12/6 octave between A0 and A1. If you tell it it's a 7-foot piano, it uses the 10th partial, and it goes from A1 to A0 ending with a pure 10/5 octave. If you tell it it's a 6-foot piano, it will generally pick the 7th partial, which is a very loud partial. Of course, there is no 7 3.5 octave, and what it really is just kind of a spread out 7th partial, so it's a little wider than what we would do with the 6th partial. And that's a very, very nice, it's a loud partial. It turns out to be a very, very good sounding tuning for most pianos. Now, and so on really small piano, well, this only asks you that on those 3 sizes. That's what those 3 sizes mean.
It pretty much, it knows if it's a smaller piano than that 99% of the time. On the rare cases where I've seen 7-foot Steinways that are restrung, and they're restrung kind of odd, so they have really high inharmonicity. And if you really want to, you can go into advanced and then.
So in other words, if this dialog box for some reason doesn't come up, if CyberTuner recognizes that it's a well-scaled, low inharmonicity piano, this dialog box is triggered. But as what Dean is saying, we've all seen this. I've worked on rebuilt Bs, where it was some guy restrung it, and God knows what he does, and CyberTuner doesn't recognize it as a Steinway B, okay? But I still want to use the 10th partial in the bass. You have to manually enter it.
You could manually do that. I would recommend if CyberTuner doesn't think that it wants this to come up, you probably don't want to come up. You probably don't want to choose 7-foot, because it really should be tuned as a 6-foot piano. The inharmonicity is high.
All right. So say I told it to the dialog box came up, and I'm working on a C3, and I told it was a 9-foot piano. How do I undo that?
Right. So occasionally, if you choose the wrong thing, just in Chameleon, hit the advanced button, and you can go in here and correct it to the correct size of piano. By just simply doing just what I did.
So when you choose the piano size, all it's doing is changing which partial it's listening to in the low bass.
That's not the only
exactly.
thing. That's not the only thing. There's a lot of other things that happen. It stores the piano size in the tuning record. It actually affects a number of other things, and it uses that information to the maximum degree possible.
Well, one of the things, just before we're going to get to this, the next section is going to be on OTSP, but it also stores that information, and it's going to change what it does to the high treble in OTSP.
Well, it also affects the overpulls in pitch raise and smart tune. If it's a really small piano, it knows that it's going to need more overpull. If it's a really, really big piano, and there's a number of graduations between there, it uses less overpull. How many people have ever pitch raised a Steinway D 40 cents? I mean, it's really, it's rare. But if you do, you'll find out that it needs a lot less overpull than a Kimball Spinet. I mean, a lot less, or even a nice quality 6-foot grand. It needs a much lower, and CyberTuner knows that. So tell it the right size. That'd be one argument for actually a 7-foot piano that's high in harmonicity, telling it it's actually a 7-foot piano, because it'll affect the overpulls a little bit. So
right.
I would listen really carefully, though. If you choose 7-foot piano and it didn't tell you it was low inharmonicity piano, I would listen really carefully to the bass octaves going down right here, and make sure you really like the low bass. And you might want to actually go in and leave it at 7-foot, and that's recorded in the tuning record. But you can actually go in and hit one time off for smart partials and move it down in the low bass to, let's say, 10. You could do that. That'd be another fix, because those are, that's kind of a special case.
Okay.
Yeah, you can turn smart partials off. You almost never want to do this, but on rare occasions you might want to choose the partials yourself. And this is one case, and you can turn it off one time. If you turn it, you're much safer just turning it off one time than the next piano it'll turn it back on for you, so you don't forget. So turn it off one time, and then change the partials to what you think they should be for whatever reason. very few people, almost nobody wants to turn it always off. So that would be really rare.
Okay.
I'm turning it back on.
So the third new feature that we have that's really, I think really the cat's meow is this new thing called OTSP, where we're tuning pure fifths, pure 12ths across the piano. Now, just a little tuning theory for everyone. Obviously, tuning starts with Pythagoras. He's working with a string, he's looking at half the distance. Pythagoras is the first to notice that you can't have pure octaves and pure fifths. You can have one or the other, but not both. And this we call the comma of Pythagoras, a simple numerical thing. I'll try not to have you glaze over, but an octave is 1,200 cents. And if I think of 7 octaves, I would have 7 times 1,200 cents, or 8,400 cents. A pure fifth is 701.96 cents. And you say, why is that? Why is it not 700 cents? Because remember, we normally temper all of our fifths. But if they were really pure, they'd be like 702 cents. And if I took 702 cents and multiplied it 12 times, I'd get 8,423.46 cents. And the difference between having 12 pure fifths and 7 pure octaves is 23.46 cents, otherwise known as the comma of Pythagoras. All of tuning, music, for the last 2,000 years, people have tried to solve this riddle of how do I square the circle? What do I do with these 23.46 cents? There's been mean tone tuning, just tone tuning. There's been a million types of tuning to try to deal with this. And there have been different results. We now are in the era where people think that most tuning should be done with equal temperament, okay? Whether that's best or not, we have someone like Fred who's an expert in non-equal temperaments, but most of us tune in equal temperaments. And what equal temperament is taken to mean is that we have, these are theoretically pure. I'm not talking about inharmonicity here. We're talking about having pure octaves, and we temper all the fifths. And we temper all the fifths by 1.96 cents, and our octaves are pure. Well, that's one way of having equal temperament. Another way of having equal temperament is we could all have pure fifths, and we could temper all of the octaves. And we could temper all of the octaves by 3.35 cents. That would work. Well, if we did that, we'd have these wonderfully pure fifths, but the octaves would sound pretty wonky. Okay, no one would like it. So we don't do that. But maybe there's a way to get better fifths and wider octaves that might balance everything out. And what that kind of magic midpoint is the pure 12th. And if you tune pure 12ths, the numbers work out so that every octave is expanded by 1 1/4 cents, and every fifth is contracted by 1 1/4 cents. And when you stack the two intervals on top of themselves, you get a pure 12th. So the octaves are a little wider than you're used to, but the fifths are a little cleaner than you're used to, and the 12ths are really wonderful, okay? There's a lot of people, there's other people around the world who have been advocating for this. Our own Kent Swafford has been talking about this for years. You know, this is not something we invented. The tuning community is very diverse, and there's a lot of how many angels can dance on the head of a pin. It's a wonderful thing. People have very strong beliefs about tuning, and they always have. So there's people who have been advocating for this for years. We're now advocating for it, or we're making it possible. I think the more each of us are using it, we're actually starting to advocate for it. We think it's a very special way of tuning.
If you're cleaning up your fifths and dirtying up your octave, what are you doing to the fourths?
The fourths are getting a little wider. And what happens?
They're a little noisier.
They're a little noisier. By definition, if the fifths get cleaner, and a lot of people, some advanced oral tuners, what they like to do is they like to tune really pure 12ths and then listen to the 11ths and kind of balance the speed of the 11ths with the cleanness of the fifth. People have been coming at this from lots of different directions. One more thing. One of the things I heard Fred say in a panel thing a number of years ago, and I think that this is true. Really good tuning, what really good tuning is about and what you really care about is large intervals over the compass of the piano. You really, when you're playing something 5 octaves apart, you want the low note to sound in tune with the high note. it's really, that's what really good tuning is spreading everything out. You know, when you're in someone's house and they've got Hanon Book 1 and they're playing in the middle of the piano, who cares? But if you have really good pianists and they're playing complicated music, this is where it really gets shown. And I think that spreading the 12ths out really knits it all together really well.
Well, it sounds like this is a radical tuning style, or that the fourths would be really wide, or it's not. It's not that far from what we've been doing all along. We haven't been doing bad tunings all these years. Okay, CyberTuners, the pure 12ths in CyberTuner, for most notes in the mid-range of the piano, the fourths are still going to end up about 1 beat per second, but they're very, very consistently 1 beat per second. They're not really going to. The pure 12ths on most pianos isn't necessarily wider in the middle of the piano. In fact, if you come down to our exhibit hall booth, we have a Boston, it's a 45-inch piano,
yeah.
A Boston 118. That piano, it's tuned to pure 12ths. The fourths are a normal 1 beat per second throughout the whole mid-range. And in fact, the 2-4-2 octaves and that from A2 to A3 and A3 to A4 are absolutely pure, is what they ended up as. Yeah, it's not a radical variation from the current tuning method, but what the pure 12th does is it gives us a measuring stick. And what we've done with CyberTuner and pure 12th is we've taken samples with Chameleon, as we usually do, and we've taken this measuring stick of a 12th, an octave plus a fifth, set it at 0, as close as we can to 0, and then we've done that throughout the whole piano. So the highest octave and the lowest octave get just a little bit of tweaking, not much, but for the most part, it's the same stretch throughout the whole piano, and it's the same stretch for all pianos. And amazingly, I wouldn't have believed this until I set this up, tuned a bunch of pianos with it, and we have our 20 beta testers tuned something like 1,000 pianos with it before we released it. It works on all pianos, everything from the worst, smallest spinet to concert grand Borsendorfers. We've done it on, and everything in between, and it works extremely well.
Dean, can I
haven't found a piano yet that it simply doesn't work on yet.
So let me just show you this. This is a Bechstein B. I think it's a 6'4" Bechstein, something like that. Normally, it's one of my clients. I've normally tuned it with OTS3, and this is how I've tuned it. And I'm going to toggle back and forth. I just tuned this piano last week before I came here, and I tuned it again with OTSP. So I'd like you to look at what OTSP looks like. That's P.
So look at
that's 3.
This is a conservative tuning style. Interestingly, so that's a fairly low beat speed for these single octaves.
What do those numbers mean?
So this is the the B is the 6/3 octave from A2 to A3, and the T is the 4/2 octave from A3 to A4. They're the 2 octaves in our 2 octave A to A temperament.
Those numbers are beats per second?
They're beats per second, yep, for the B. And the D is the double octave from A2 to A4. Now notice go back to notice these are positive numbers, 0.06 and 0.14. Now go back to the P. Notice the little negative symbol there. This is actually a way different tuning, and the double octave is much more conservative than OTS3, excuse me. So the double octave is actually narrower, but it's apportioned the single octaves differently. Now in pure 12ths, what CyberTuner does is it does pay attention to the double octave quite a bit, but the single octaves actually has no specification at all for pure 12ths. They end up whatever they end up, and it just spreads them out to the right place. So these numbers are whatever they end up. It doesn't actually care what those numbers end up. It's letting you know that's what they were for comparison to the other octave tuning styles.
So let's just look at something. Let's focus our attention. Let's look at the blue line on the right going up to C8. So this is OTSP. This is OTS3. Notice it makes it a little sharper. It pulls it up. Okay.
How big is this piano?
It's 6'4".
Okay. We're actually still working on this a little bit, and this is splitting the difference right now with this version. It splits the difference between the 12th and 19th up there. 19th is 2 octaves and a fifth. What we've done in the latest, we have a version we'll be beta testing in the next few weeks, and we'll be releasing in August. On smaller pianos, 6 foot and smaller, what we found is it's better to just plain do the perfect 12ths, pure 12ths all the way to the top.
So it would come out a little bit flatter
Yeah,
than this.
a new version will come out just, a little bit, I'm going to guess 10 cents less sharp on the high end on this particular
But
piano.
so now look at the 7 in the bottom. Look at the low bass. And notice this is in P, this is in 3.
So it's a subtle difference, but it's a couple cents, 1 to 2 cents difference, and a little bit more stretch. But
Well, the other thing I want you to look at, and this is pretty consistent, this is what I've been finding using this OTSP. Look at the 6 in the second bass octave. So this is in 3. Notice what's going to happen to the top of the 6 in P. It's going to go up.
in other
3,
words, there's actually less
P.
stretch right here. In this part of the piano, there's less stretch compared to the notes above it.
And you can see it with this minus 0.49. It's tipping you off to that. But now look at the 4. Look at the red 4. This is the tenor section. This is across the break. Look what happens when we go to 3 and we go to P. It's again a little sharper. One of the things that tends to happen in OTSP in the middle of the piano as we go across the break is the upper bass notes are a little sharper, the lower tenor notes are a little sharper. If you listen to 6th or 10th or stuff across the break, they're a little slower. It's a little slower. It's a little cleaner across the break. That's just one of the main oral differences that I'm noticing. When I'm listening to consecutive intervals, it's growing on me. I'm learning to like this. I think 12. I think there's a lot here, and we're going to play with it. And I encourage all of you to play with this. And any feedback that you have, we would love to hear it. If you have a piano where it does a terrible job, you go, what is going on? Please let us know and send us the tuning file. We'd like to look at it. We'd like to see why it does a terrible job.
So just to explain a little bit, for those who haven't viewed a lot of graphs, one of the things you can glean from this graph is the angle, the slope. The flatter the slope, the less inharmonicity and the less the stretch usually. And the steeper the slope, the greater inharmonicity forces more stretch. Also, if these actually move up compared to the little section above it, that means that we've stretched it less going down for whatever reason.
Question, Dave.
Carl, can you show how that affects the OTS slider affects the graph?
Absolutely. And it works on any OTS.
We were going to get this. The question is about the high treble slider.
So everybody, you see where it says pure in the upper right. This is the OTS drop-down menu. If I go in there, down at the bottom of the menu, it says high treble tuning style. And it has HTS adjust, and it has adjust as a default. So normally it's set to 0. And that means that whatever the OTS tuning style is, it is. The numbers, if I set this to plus 2.0 or minus 3.0, it's changing at that number of tuning styles. So in other words, if I have an OTS 4 tuning and I put plus 2 on this slider, it's going to tune A7 as if it was an OTS 6 tuning. If I put it at minus 3, it's going to tune A7 as if it was an OTS 1 tuning. In other words, these are OTS numbers that you're changing only for the 7th octave. When you define an octave tuning style, it has a global stretch for the whole piano, and in addition, it has a kicker. It has an additional stretch for A7. In most cases, like OTS 4 being the most common, A7 is defined as a pure double octave from A5. But in the OTSs that are less than that, A7 is defined as being somewhere between the 2-1 octave and the 4-1 double octave. On the numbers greater than 4, like OTS 6, on OTS 6 it's 2/5 of the way between a pure double octave and a pure triple octave. You're making it wider. You're moving to the triple octave above. This is part. So when I pick OTS 7, not only am I making the global stretch wider, but I'm also setting A7 now to be 3/5 of the way between the double octave and the triple octave. It's part of every one of the OTSs. There's an extra little juice up at the top.
So we made the high treble slider work in octave tuning style P also, but obviously there's no OTS below it or above it. So it simply does a couple cents per OTS number. So 2 or 3 cents per OTS number. I forget the exact number. but it gives you a little more juice or a little less juice. In the case of if you have a really small piano and you just want less stretch in pure 12ths, just try it -2, -3, -4 up there, and it'll feather it in really nice and smooth. Let me just do this Yamaha here. 6 foot. It's actually a 6-foot piano, and I'll just calculate an example piano for the example for this Yamaha. Whoops.
Just calculate.
Yeah, you do. I could.
Does Yamaha, just do this Yamaha C6.
There we go, last recorded piano. This is the recorded piano, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have the high treble slider set to 0, standard. And I'm just going to calculate it and look real quick. It's right about 48 or so at C8. Kind of a lot for this piano. It wouldn't sound screaming, but a little bit.
6'11" piano.
It's pushing the limits.
You're not going to break strings.
No, you're not going to break strings, but it might be a little over the top. And if you want to, and this is pure 12ths, if you want to, wrong button. Okay, I don't know how to use this program. There we go. Okay. Okay, so I just set that to -3, calculate. So now we're down to -40, okay? So 2 or 3 cents per number that we've brought it down. You could bring it down a little farther than that.
But this raises the question, when would you do something like this, okay? We have a lot of our users who really are loving this extra stretch. I make a distinction between concert pianos, stage pianos, recording pianos, and home pianos. I'm much more conservative on home pianos. The number one issue for me with a home piano is I don't want to be called back, okay? I don't want anyone to complain for any reason. I'm not trying to do the world's greatest tuning. I'm trying to do a good tuning, but I don't want to be called back, okay? So I'm a little bit more conservative. I might use a lower OTS. If I saw that the stretch was too high, I might bring it down 50 cents in a home piano. Someone might complain. I'm a little conservative. When I'm on a stage piano, I really like to push it for a number of reasons. Number one, I tuned it for a performance. I'm going to tune it for the next performance. It doesn't have to last that long. And the more you stretch a piano, it tends to carry and fill a room, and it's got lots of benefits. So when I'm working on a stage piano, I really, 50 cents high on the C6 on stage, I'd say go for it, okay? But if I were in a recording session, I would probably do -3, and I would bring it down to 40, because I just don't want it to be so high that they're playing, no instruments are playing in that range, but when they're playing the other instruments, I don't want the engineer taking out whatever measure he has. He says, wow, that piano's sharp up at the top. It's just, I'm more conservative when I'm in a studio. I'm more conservative when I'm in people's houses, and I push it more when I'm on stage. That's just my rule of thumb. So the one thing I'd like you to do, Dean, what I think is a little different, would you tune a note in SmartTune? That we have an issue that comes up a lot. People say, well, how do you tune when you're tuning in SmartTune? Do you just pull the note in and then do the other unisons and it's drifting and it's falling flat and then just move on to the next note? Or do you really fuss and try to get a full blush before you go to the next note? What's the right way to tune? Well, let's get it straight from the horse's mouth.
Okay, SmartTune.
How do you set the piano up for SmartTune?
So normally, you choose the tuning mode button.
Put it in concert, please.
Oh, no, we don't want to do that. And then we go to and choose the where the different plate struts are. And I'm not going to take the time to do that, but
talk about that. It's worth a minute here.
Okay.
It asks you where the plate struts are. Why does it ask you? It turns out, and the note that we're talking about is the note just to the bass side, just to the left side of the struts. But the question is, why does it care? It turns out we don't really care about the struts. It's not that the struts are more rigid and therefore something is going on. What's important is underneath the struts, there's a void on the bridge where there's no wire. On all the other notes, there's pre-drop, there's post-drop, and you're coming up. Where there's the blank space, those notes on either side of the strut react a little bit differently. And so remember, we're trying to do one pass tuning and nail it. We're not trying to get close. So one of the things it needs to know is where are the struts.
So on this Yamaha, I've set all the struts. The lowest trichord note, since this is the same as the lowest tenor note because it doesn't have any wound strings above the break. So when you're starting a new pitch raise or a new Smart Tune mode pass, you want to press this button right here. If you don't press that button, you run the risk of having the overpulls from the last pass and all your original cents, or some notes at least, messing you up. So if this is a new pass on a new piano, you want to hit Start New. That erases all the overpulls you don't want to use from the last pass or the last piano. So, and I'm going to go into landscape mode because that gives me a lot more information. You can double check where the breaks are that we already put in. If you want, you can see where they are. It points to the notes that we're interested in. Right at A4. So I'm waiting until it fills in before I move the note. And I'm actually doing a negative pitch raise here on this piano. Okay, full blush, really happy. So what do we do with the next two notes? Do we make them blush too on Smart Tune? No, not necessarily. What we want to do is tune the other two strings by ear to the first string and get a good unison. What's going to happen a lot of times, especially if you're going to pitch raise or pitch lower more than this, is you're going to see, if it's a pitch raise, you're going to see all three strings drop just a little bit, and you're going to see your spinner start to sneak to the left. Let it sneak to the left. Just let it do it. Don't obsess and go in a circle. You'd be chasing your tail by trying to pull it up again and getting the spinner to stop. Just tune the other two strings. You're going to be a lot faster, and that's what CyberTuner is expecting you to do, and that's what the overpulls are based on. You tuning one string, center string usually. It doesn't really matter which of the three strings, and then pulling the other two strings in to that first string, and kind of ignoring the spinner. You can let the spinner help you a little bit, but don't go retune your first string. Okay, question?
Okay, so procedure on these, I'm sure everybody does it differently. Start at low A, go up to the top, all single strings, and then go back and tune the unisons.
No, absolutely not.
Don't do that.
Never.
No, you want to tune all the strings as you go up the piano. All the strings as you go is the best way to go, and that's what CyberTuner is expecting you to do. You want to make sure you do what CyberTuner is expecting you to, because that's the optimal way to change the pitch on a piano. The reason is because the notes ahead of you are going to be dropping even more. They're going to be dropping as you pull those notes up. The notes ahead of you drop. I mean, if you have a piano that's 50 cents flat, try this sometime, or any significant amount flat. Measure middle C, or A, whatever. Measure middle C, how flat it is, and then pitch raise the piano all the way up with pull all the strings up until you get to B, just before middle C. Then measure middle C again. Middle C is going to be, if it was 40 cents flat to start with, it's now going to be 50 or 60 cents flat, okay? CyberTuner's including that pre-drop, not the notes dropping ahead of you in the pitch raise. As soon as you go to that next note C, it goes, aha! It's now 60 cents flat instead of 40 cents, which is what it was originally. It's going to calculate your overpull based on that new number. If you tune all the center strings only, it's not going to, you're going to minimize instead of maximize that predictable pre-drop.
Yeah, you will not get good results. CyberTuner is based on going string by string. The most stable way to tune is to put a smooth deformation on the piano. I use one wedge, left, center, right, left, center, right. I literally go from the lowest string to the highest string. That's the most stable way to tune a piano.
I want to tune my unisons orally.
Yeah.
I'm tuning orally.
Yeah, tuning your
I'm
unisons
setting the
orally.
left string to CyberTuner, center and right by ear. Left string to CyberTuner, center and right by ear. Left string, center and right. I'm doing my thing. The only exception I would say to all of you, and this is for fine tuning, I can still hear, my hearing is tested, I can hear well in the high notes. I tune my highest octave string by string to CyberTuner and just confirm. I do not tune my unisons orally. CyberTuner just stopping the spinner on every string
in the
highest octave is better than I can tune orally.
Absolutely, I do the same thing. I discovered that one time when somebody's on stage, somebody's doing they start up a vacuum cleaner, and I can't. I'm not going to be able to tune this orally at all. So I tuned my last octave completely to the machine. It was going to be way faster because I can't hear anything. When I got done, they got done too, because they had to be done at the same time for the same reason I did.
Well, doesn't that always happen to you? Just when you start, it's time to vacuum.
And I had like 1 minute to go back and touch these up, and they didn't need any touching up. I actually never heard that Steinway D sound that good up in the top end, so I've done that ever since. It takes me an extra couple of minutes, but it's worth it.
So we have room for 1 or 2 questions, if anyone has anything that they want to bring. Michael, Con.
In CyberTuner preferences, and we're looking at arc and smoothing.
Yes.
What does that pertain to? Spinner?
Oh, I like my arc at 40 cents. He changed it. I actually like here's why. I like the colored portion. It comes out of the box at 90%. I like the colored portion to be 40%. And the reason I like that is because the black background is the other part of the colored portion. Move the arc to 40%. That's where I usually leave it.
So I like mine at 60 standard. So no surprise there. So you like yours at 40?
Yeah, I tune at 40.
Okay.
Now let's take a look at it.
Okay, it's
And
just
and just go to CyberTuner, and go to okay, and you see how it's little. Now, why I like it like that is because there's more black, and the blush is more visible. The blush is visible over the black. So that's why I lower it from 90 degrees or 60 degrees to 40 degrees. This is where you can customize it. I'm hot rodding. I turn the speed up. I make it more sensitive. I change the colors. I change the arc. It doesn't do anything for me tuning-wise. It just makes me think, my CyberTuner's cooler than your CyberTuner.
So the smoothing, I'd recommend you just leave it on medium, but if you really want it on the bleeding edge, you can move the smoothing up to faster. And what that does is it'll make the spinner a little more jumpy, because it won't average the sound samples as much, and it gives you the very latest sound samples right to the spinner. What we find is you're probably better off in most cases.
Buffering it a little bit is always better. You don't need it to have the last time frame and be what you're looking at.
Medium's usually better for most people, but if you want the bleeding edge, the most sensitive spinner, you set it to 0.8 and smoothing to faster, and that'll speed up the processing of the spinner so that it responds to the note more quickly. If you can stand it to be that jumpy, though.
Well, it makes the blush more sensitive. It means that if you're getting a blush, you're closer than if it's on a slower speed.
You're more on the metal, though. It's like you're driving a car without shocks. You're going to have better handling, but it's not going to be comfy.
Exactly. That's an excellent analogy. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So listen, we've reached the end of our hour and a half. We thank you so much for coming to this. Please fill out your instructor forms, and maybe they'll hire us for next year.
So if anybody didn't do an instructor